Have you ever witnessed a moment where justice turned the tables on injustice? Billionaire couple's black daughter was excluded from the guest list, but her father made them regret it. "I'm sorry, but your name isn't on the list." The voice of event organizer Victoria Sterling cut through the air like a cold knife as Maya Henderson stood frozen at the entrance to the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. The winter-born annual charity gala, high society's most exclusive event, was taking place just a few feet away. The sound of crystal-clear laughter and the clinking of French champagne glasses echoed through the Italian marble lobby, contrasting sharply with the awkward silence that now surrounded Maya. "There must be some mistake," Maya said calmly, adjusting the strap of her clutch bag. "My name is Maya Henderson. My family always attends this gala." Victoria lazily flipped through the pages of the golden tablet, her blue eyes clearly avoiding eye contact. "Henderson. Henderson," she muttered theatrically. "Ah, here it is." Apparently, there was a reorganization of the guest list this year. Capacity issues. You understand? Maya was 23 years old and knew exactly what was going on. The adopted daughter of Margaret and Richard Henderson, one of the most influential couples in the country. She had grown up navigating situations like this with a grace that impressed even her parents. But this time was different. This gala benefited the orphanage where she had lived before her adoption. A quick flashback crossed her mind at age 8, looking out the dirty window of that same orphanage, dreaming of a future that seemed impossible. Today, 15 years later, she was being barred from an event created precisely to raise funds for children like she had been. "Get ready for a twist you won't believe." "Interesting," Maya replied, her voice maintaining that serenity that only exists in those who have weathered much worse storms, especially considering that my family donated $2.5 million to this organization last year. Victoria's artificial smile faltered for a microsecond before returning, more tense now. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "As I said, capacity issues. Maybe next year if there's interest." Behind Maya, a line of guests began to form. Discreet whispers floated through the air conditioning, some out of curiosity, others out of obvious discomfort. The situation was turning into a public spectacle, exactly as Victoria had planned. "It's such a shame," said a female voice behind her, laden with false sympathy. "Some places just aren't for certain people." Maya turned slowly, immediately recognizing Vivian Blackwood, wife of the oil tycoon. The woman smiled with that polished cruelty that the elite had perfected over generations. At her side, two other socialites watched the scene as if they were watching a show. "Certain people?" Maya asked, tilting her head slightly. "You know what I mean?" Vivian replied, examining Maya from head to toe with barely concealed contempt. "It's a matter of cultural appropriateness. This event has traditions, standards that must be upheld." "Standards," Maya repeated slowly, as if savoring the word. A middle-aged man in an impeccable tuxedo approached the group. "Problem here, Victoria?" asked Thomas Whitmore, one of the gala's biggest donors. "No problem, Mr. Whitmore," Victoria replied quickly. "Just clearing up some protocol issues." Thomas glanced at Maya with that quick assessment that privileged people do instinctively. "Ah, I see. Well, I'm sure there are more appropriate events for people like you. There are several community organizations that do wonderful work." Maya felt her smartphone vibrate discreetly in her purse. A message from her father arriving in 20 minutes. "Everything okay there?" She typed back, "Perfectly, just gathering evidence." What neither of them knew was that Maya had recorded the entire conversation on her phone. And what they definitely didn't know was that Richard Henderson, her father, wasn't just influential. He was the silent owner of the hotel chain that included the Grand Metropolitan. More than that, he was the gala's main private financier, contributing nearly 40% of the total budget. "You know," Maya said, putting away her phone and smiling for the first time that night, a smile that made Vivian instinctively take a small step back, "you're absolutely right about cultural appropriateness." Victoria frowned, confused by the sudden change in tone. "Some people really don't belong in certain places," Maya continued, her eyes shining with something that made Thomas shift uncomfortably. "The question is, who decides who those people are?" She walked away from the entrance with the dignity of a queen, her footsteps echoing across the marble like an unspoken promise. While waiting for the elevator, she took out her phone and typed a simple message. "Dad, we need to talk. It's time." Through the glass wall, Maya could see the main hall filled with people who considered themselves the elite of society, completely oblivious to the fact that their perfect evening was about to be turned into something they would never forget. Because sometimes underestimating a Henderson is the biggest mistake anyone can make. If you're enjoying this story of justice and revenge, don't forget to subscribe to the Black Voices channel, because what happened after this public humiliation turned a simple charity gala into the stage for one of the most satisfying twists you've ever seen. 40 miles north in the executive office of Henderson Industries, Richard Henderson stopped reviewing acquisition contracts the moment Maya's message arrived. "Dad, we need to talk. It's time." At 52, Richard had built an empire that stretched from telecommunications to hospitality. But nothing in the business world had prepared him for the silent fury that now burned in his chest. He knew that tone from his daughter. Maya only used its time when she had decided that diplomacy would no longer work. "Cancel all my meetings tonight," he told his assistant over the intercom. "And connect me to our legal department. I need Jonathan Cruz at the Grand Metropolitan in an hour." Jonathan Cruz wasn't just any lawyer. He was the man who had destroyed entire corporate empires with the same ease that others signed contracts. More importantly, he was black, brilliant, and had grown up in the same orphanage as Maya. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Maya had found refuge in the lobby cafe, discreetly watching the gala proceedings through the glass doors. Her phone vibrated constantly with messages of support from other guests who had witnessed the public humiliation. "I saw what happened. That is unacceptable. Sarah Chun, daughter of the ambassador. Victoria Sterling has always been like this. My parents are furious. Marcus Williams, heir to a banking dynasty. Are you okay? Those women are terrible. Dr. Amanda Foster, renowned cardiologist." Maya smiled bitterly. The elite was dividing, and she hadn't even started yet. Across the lobby, Victoria Sterling celebrated discreetly with Vivian Blackwood and Thomas Whitmore in a secluded corner of the bar. "Did you see how quietly she left?" Vivian laughed, raising her champagne glass. "Some people just need to learn their place." "The best part," Thomas added, "is that now we have a precedent. If more undesirable elements try to infiltrate our events, we know exactly how to handle them." Victoria nodded with satisfaction. "My husband always says, tradition is tradition. We can't let just anyone feel entitled to participate just because they have money. There are issues of lineage to consider." What none of them realized was that Maya had returned to the lobby and, strategically positioned behind a decorative column, was recording every word with the crystal clarity of her professional smartphone. More than that, she was streaming everything live to a private group that included investigative journalists, activists, and influencers that Richard had cultivated over the years. "Lineage," Maya muttered to herself, adjusting the angle of the camera. "Let's talk about lineage." An hour later, Jonathan Cruz strode through the lobby of the Grand Metropolitan like an elegant predator. Tall, imposing, wearing a suit that cost more than many managers' annual salaries. He carried an Italian leather briefcase that contained something far more powerful than documents. "Maya," he said, hugging her warmly. "It's been a long time. Your father told me what happened. They're about to find out what happens when you mess with a Henderson." "Jonathan," she smiled genuinely this time. "Thanks for coming. I have some interesting things to show you." She handed him the phone, showing him not only the recordings from that night, but a digital folder she had compiled over the past few months. Screenshots of private groups where Victoria and her friends made openly racist comments. Messages where they discussed strategies for keeping the standard at social events. Emails between Thomas Whitmore and other businessmen coordinating silent boycotts of black-owned businesses. "Jesus Christ," Jonathan muttered, scrolling through the digital evidence. "They documented everything. It's like they wanted to get caught." "Arrogance has a price," Maya replied. "And tonight, the bill has arrived." At that moment, Richard Henderson parked discreetly in the hotel's underground garage, not at the main entrance, where cameras and social reporters could see him. He had bigger plans, and surprise was essential. Victoria Sterling, still drunk on the power of her small victory, had no idea that every word she had uttered in the last 90 minutes was being prepared to become evidence in a case that would destroy not only her reputation, but the entire rotten social structure she had helped build. "You know," Maya said to Jonathan, putting away her phone, "there's one thing they don't understand about growing up in an orphanage. You learn to observe, to remember, and most importantly, you learn that survival sometimes requires strategic patience." Jonathan smiled with a kind of satisfaction that only exceptional lawyers know before a guaranteed victory. "And tonight," Maya replied, her eyes flashing with a determination that would make any opponent reconsider their choices, "tonight, they're going to find out that underestimating a Henderson was the biggest mistake of their privileged lives. Because sometimes justice doesn't come like thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, methodically, carrying irrefutable evidence." At 10:15 p.m., just as Victoria Sterling raised her fourth glass of champagne to celebrate what she called the maintenance of social standards, the lights in the main ballroom of the gala flickered 3 times in succession. It was a signal known only to the senior management of the Grand Metropolitan. The owner was in the building. "Ladies and gentlemen," echoed a voice over the sound system, interrupting the conversations and causing all heads to turn toward the main entrance. "May I have your attention for a special announcement?" Richard Henderson emerged from the shadows of the hallway like a silent storm. There was no hurry in his steps, only the calculated determination of a man who had built an empire and was now ready to use it as a weapon. Behind him, Jonathan Cruz followed carrying a briefcase that would make any corporate lawyer break out in a cold sweat. The room, which seconds before had been buzzing with laughter and lively conversation, fell into a tense silence. Victoria Sterling nearly dropped her glass, her face draining of color. "Richard Henderson," she whispered to Vivian, who had also turned pale. "What is he doing here?" "Good evening," Richard said into the microphone, his voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Richard Henderson, the majority owner of this magnificent property you have chosen to celebrate in tonight." A collective gasp of shock rippled through the room. Until now, the ownership of the Grand Metropolitan had been kept a closely guarded secret through a complex network of holding companies. The revelation hit the guests like a bombshell. More importantly, Richard continued, his eyes locking directly with Victoria's, "I am the proud father of Maya Henderson, the young woman who was publicly humiliated in this very entrance a few hours ago." Victoria Sterling felt her legs go weak. Thomas Whitmore choked on his whiskey. Vivian Blackwood desperately searched for an exit with her eyes like a cornered animal. "Now," Richard said, gesturing to Jonathan, "I would like to share with you some interesting recordings that were collected tonight. I believe they are quite enlightening about the standards that some of you hold so dear." The hotel sound system came to life with the crystal-clear words of Victoria. "Some places are simply not for certain people. It's a matter of cultural appropriateness. Tradition is tradition. We can't let just anyone feel entitled to participate just because they have money. There are issues of lineage to consider." The silence that followed was deafening. Some people began to discreetly move away from Victoria and her group. Phones were pulled out not for selfies but to record the unfolding scandal in real time. "Lineage," Richard repeated, savoring the word. What a fascinating term coming from people whose greatest achievement in life was inheriting money that other people earned. Maya then appeared at the main entrance, walking with the serene dignity of someone who knows that justice has finally arrived. She was carrying a tablet with dozens of screenshots and messages that Victoria and her friends had exchanged in private groups over the months. "Victoria," Maya said, her voice echoing through the silent hall. "Do you remember this message you sent to the Guardians of Tradition group 3 weeks ago?" She read aloud, "We need to be stricter about who we let into our events. Some people just don't have the necessary upbringing regardless of how much money they may have gotten." Victoria tried to protest, but the words died in her throat as Maya continued. "Or this one from 2 months ago. It's not just the color, it's the whole cultural difference. They don't understand our traditions." Thomas Whitmore, desperate to save his own reputation, tried to walk away from the group, but Jonathan Cruz intercepted him. Mr. Whitmore, I believe you also have some interesting messages to share, especially the ones about maintaining the purity of business environments. The businessman turned pale when he realized that his corporate emails had also been exposed. The saddest part, Richard said, taking the microphone again, is that Maya grew up in the orphanage this gala is supposed to benefit. She didn't come here as an intruder into your privileged spaces. She came to support children who have gone through the same thing she did. And you treated her like an obstacle to be removed. Vivian Blackwood, trying one last desperate card, rose from the table. This is absurd. You are twisting our words, creating a scandal where there is none. Maya smiled, not cruelly, but with a quiet satisfaction of someone who sees the truth finally coming to light. Ms. Blackwood, you said, and I quote, exactly 47 minutes ago, some people just need to learn their place. The recording is here with a timestamp, and it was broadcast live to 43 journalists and activists. My father knows. The room exploded in shocked murmurs. Guests began to visibly distance themselves from Victoria's group as if her toxicity were contagious. Smartphones captured every second, turning the humiliation into viral content in real time. But the best part, said Jonathan Cruz, opening his briefcase, is that the Grand Metropolitan Hotel has just permanently cancelled any future events organized by Victoria Sterling Events. Her contracts with the Winterbourne Social Circle have been terminated effective immediately, and a lawsuit for discrimination and emotional distress will be filed first thing tomorrow morning. Victoria Sterling, the woman who had controlled the city's social elite for 2 decades, crumbled before hundreds of people. Her tears were not tears of regret, but of impotent rage at being exposed and destroyed by those she had always considered inferior. Justice, Maya said, putting away her tablet and heading for the exit, is not about revenge. It's about making sure that other people don't go through what I went through today. As Maya and Richard walked together toward the exit, the hall behind them buzzed with a kind of gossip that destroys reputations in a matter of hours. Victoria Sterling had gone from respected organizer to social pariah in a single night, and everyone knew there was no coming back. In the center of that hall, where discrimination disguised as tradition had once reigned, a new reality was now taking shape, like a symphony finally finding harmony after years of discordant notes, proving that true excellence knows no color, social class, or limitations imposed by those who fear true greatness. 6 months later, Maya Henderson sat in the executive office of the newly created Henderson Foundation for Social Equality with a panoramic view of the city that had once tried to exclude her. What began as public humiliation had become the catalyst for a silent revolution. The numbers are impressive, said Dr. Sarah Chun, now the Foundation's program director, leafing through the annual report. 15 luxury hotels have implemented inclusion policies after the Grand Metropolitan Incident, as the media began to call it. 3 event organizers were fired for proven discrimination, and donations to orphanages are up 340% this year. Maya smiled, remembering the night that changed everything. The video of the confrontation had gone viral, not just as a social scandal, but as a symbol of intelligent resistance against institutionalized prejudice. Across town, Victoria Sterling was living a completely different reality. Her company had gone bankrupt within weeks of the exposure. Clients canceled million-dollar contracts, suppliers cut ties, and even her closest friends avoided her in public. The penthouse apartment had been sold to pay legal debts, and she now worked as an administrative assistant at a small corporate events company, an irony that was not lost on anyone. She tried to sue me for defamation, Maya told Jonathan Cruz during one of their weekly meetings. But it's hard to claim defamation when your own words were recorded in high definition. Jonathan laughed, putting away the documents that proved yet another legal victory. Vivian Blackwood also dropped the lawsuit. Apparently, she found out that her husband is facing a federal audit of his oil companies. Interesting coincidence considering that some of those recordings mention tax evasion. Thomas Whitmore had lost 3 major government contracts after his discriminatory emails were exposed. His business reputation was ruined, and several minority-owned companies he had boycotted were now thriving with the same contracts that had previously been denied them. But the most significant transformation was happening at the orphanage Maya once called home. The Henderson Foundation had completely renovated the facilities, implemented advanced educational programs, and created a scholarship fund for higher education that ensured every child who left there would have real opportunities for success. The most beautiful part, Margaret Henderson said during Sunday dinner, is seeing how you've turned pain into purpose. Those women tried to diminish you, but they ended up amplifying your voice to the whole world. Richard nodded proudly. The Grand Metropolitan has become a symbol of inclusion and excellence. Other hotels in the chain are implementing the same protocols. We even received an award from the Chamber of Commerce for innovation in social responsibility. Maya looked out the window at the brightly lit city, reflecting on the journey. You know what impresses me the most? It wasn't revenge that changed things. It was the truth. When you expose prejudice to the light of day, it can't survive. That same week, Maya received a special invitation. The new organizer of the Winterbourne annual charity gala, now renamed the Gala of Hope and Inclusion, formally requested her presence as the guest of honor. The event had been completely revamped with a real focus on social outcomes rather than exclusive status. Ironic, Maya muttered, clutching the golden invitation. A year ago, I was told I didn't belong there. Now they want me to be the keynote speaker. On the night of the gala, Maya stepped onto the stage where she had once been humiliated and looked out at a completely different audience. Diverse faces, varied stories, people who had overcome obstacles similar to hers. A year ago, Maya began her speech. I learned that discrimination is like a disease that can only be cured with total transparency. When you shine a light on the dark corners where prejudice hides, it loses its power. The audience applauded, but Maya wasn't finished. True victory isn't seeing your oppressors fall. It's building a world where future generations never have to go through what you went through. During the cocktail reception, a young man approached her shyly. Ms. Henderson, my name is David. I came from the same orphanage as you. I got a scholarship from your foundation and now I'm studying law. I wanted to thank you for proving that people like us can achieve anything. Maya felt tears well up in her eyes. Here was the true measure of her triumph. Not the downfall of Victoria Sterling, but the rise of young people like David. Months later, Victoria Sterling attempted one last outreach through a handwritten letter. Maya, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your actions forced me to confront prejudices I had carried for decades. I'm trying to be a better person. The letter ended with an apology that came too late to repair the damage, but early enough to perhaps save the soul of the person who wrote it. Maya folded the letter and tucked it away, not out of spite, but as a reminder that even those who hurt us can learn and grow, though that doesn't absolve them of the consequences of their choices. Today, when children visit the renovated orphanage, they see a framed photo on the wall. Maya Henderson on her college graduation day, smiling alongside Richard and Margaret. The plaque below simply reads, "Every child deserves a future without limits." The best revenge, Maya discovered, was not to destroy those who had hurt her. It was to build a legacy that would make it impossible for others to suffer the same injustice. Victoria Sterling became a footnote in history while Maya became the chapter itself, proving that dignity, intelligence, and purpose always triumph over prejudice and arrogance. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the Black Voices channel for more stories that prove that the greatest revenge is the success our oppressors never thought possible.